Dear students, I hope you all are fine and safe at home. As you all know that I am taking your second language English class, and today I'll be starting lesson number 4, which is a poem, My Own True Family by Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes. Now, his real name was Edward James Hughes, born in 1930 and died in the year 1998. He was a noted English poet, and in 1984, he was appointed as the Poet Laureate. Now, Poet Laureate is an honorary position and is appointed by the monarch on the advice of the Prime Minister. So the job or the work of the Poet Laureate is to write verse on special national occasions. So Ted Hughes was also became the Poet Laureate in 1984 and remained as the Poet Laureate till his death, that is, till 1998. Now, critics often regard Ted Hughes as one of the greatest poets of his generation. In 2008, the Times newspaper ranked him fourth on the list of top 50 British writers since 1945. Now, some of his notable works are The Birthday Letters, The Hawk in the Rain, and Tales from Ovid. Now, this is about the poet that is Ted Hughes. Now, let us move to the poem that is My Own True Family. So the poem that is My Own True Family revolves around the exploitation of Mother Nature by human beings for their selfish gains. And the painful thing is that we human beings do not try to heal the wounds caused by us. So the poem is also a warning to the mankind that if we do not restrain our greed, then this will surely lead to the destruction of all living creatures. The poem also focuses on the need to protect our environment and for the welfare of us, that is, we human beings. So the poem also preaches that mankind and trees must thrive as a single family. So these are some of the lessons that we learn from this poem, My Own True Family. Now let's begin the poem. Once I crept in an oak wood. I was looking for a stag. I met an old woman there, all nobly stick and rag. She said, I have your secret here inside my little bag. So the poem is in a dream narration. The poet while resting under the branches of a tree, falls asleep. And in his dream, he sees that he is chasing a stag. That is, stag means a male deer. That means he is awoke in his dream. And there he meets an old woman, all nobly stick and rag. All nobly means unsteady. So the woman is very frail, feeble, weak. And her clothes are all worn out, patched here and there. So because the woman is old, she is walking unsteadily in an unstable manner. So the poet, in his dream, he wakes up, and while running, or let's say while looking for a stag, there he meets an old woman who is very weak and frail. Then she says to the poet, I have your secret here inside my little bag. So the old woman, when she meets the poet, she says to the poet that I have your secret here inside my bag. Then she began to cackle and I began to quack. So, just like in the horror movies, the old woman begins to cackle, means laugh in a high pitched sound. And when the poet sees or hears the old woman laughing in a very high pitched tone, then he begins to tremble with fear. She opened up her little bag, and I came twice awake, surrounded by a staring tribe and me tied to a stake. So, with the old woman opens up her bag, and again, when the old woman opens up her bag, she casts a spell upon the poet, upon the child. And then he falls asleep. And when he wakes up, he finds himself tied to a stake surrounded by the oak trees. Now, oak trees means a kind of tree. In Nepali, we can say katus. All right. So now the poet says over here that when the old woman opens up her little bag, and I came twice awake, the poet awakens for the second time. Now, when the poem begins, the poet is actually resting under the branches of a tree. And there, in his dream, he wakes up and meets the old woman. So that is when he wakes up for the first time. Now, when the old woman opens up her little bag, she casts a spell upon the poet, and he again falls asleep. Then when he wakes up, that is, now he is waking up for the second time. That is why the poet says, I came twice awake. So when he wakes up for the second time, he finds himself surrounded by a tribe, a staring tribe. The tribe is looking at the poet, and he is tied to a stake, means a thick log or stick. Now, some people argue and place their point by saying that twice awake over here means the spiritual awakening of the poet. This is the time when the poet again wakes up for the second time, and this is from where the poet wakes his conscience. So the spirit of the poet awakens at this time. Now, the poet is surrounded by a tribe of oak trees, and he is tied to a stake. They said, we are the oak trees and your own true family. We are chopped down, we are torn up, you do not blink an eye. So the oak trees says to the poet, when the oak trees finds out that the poet has awakened. So the oak trees again says to the poet that we are the oak trees and we are your own true family. Right? But we are chopped down, we are cut down, we are torn up, we are torn into pieces, cut down into pieces. And you human beings do this unhesitatingly, without any hesitation. So indifferently, without any feeling, we human beings cut down trees and hack the branches of the trees into pieces. This is what the oak tree says to the poet. Now over here, the oak trees In reality, the oak trees do not speak, but the oak trees over here has been personified, or let's say the poet has used a figure of speech, that is personification. Now, personification is the figure of speech where the inanimate, lifeless objects are given human attributes or human qualities. That is why the oak trees over here are personified. So they act like human beings. All right. And that is why they are talking to the poet. So the oak tree says, unless you make a promise now you are going to die. So unless you take an oath now or make a promise now, you all are going to die. Whenever you see an oak tree felled, swear now you will plant two. So the oak trees makes the poet take a promise to plant two trees if the poet sees an oak tree being cut down. All right. So that is why, let's go back to the poem, and when the oak tree says, unless you make a promise now you are going to die. Meaning, if all the trees are cut down, then it is going to affect the human beings adversely or negatively. All right. You know very well about the food chain. What happens in a food chain? If a certain thing gets disturbed, all right, disturbed, then what happens is the other is also affected negatively or adversely. So the whole food chain breaks down. So same thing. So if all the trees are cut down, then it's the human beings who will suffer in the long run. It will bring about the ruin of the human beings. This is what the oak trees are trying to make the poet and the readers realize, that we should not cut down trees. We should protect our environment. So let's continue. Whenever you see an oak tree felled, swear now you will plant two. Meaning, swear means promise. So the oak trees are making the poet take a promise that if he sees a tree being cut down, make sure that you plant two instead of one. Unless you swear, the black oak bark will wrinkle over you and root you among the oaks where you were born but never grew. Now, unless you make a promise, then the dark bark of our tree will going to entangle you, tie you up, and bury you deep in the ground from where you were born but never grew. Meaning, over here the poet is growing up, but the poet has not matured. Now, there is a difference between growing up and maturity. All right, a person may grow up, all right, physically, but it becomes useless if it does not mature. All right, the state, the position, the situation of the poet is similar to that. The poet is growing up, but the oak tree thinks that the poet has not matured mentally. All right, now let's continue. This was my dream beneath the boughs. So all this was not real. All this was just a dream of the poet. So now it was a very meaningful dream, because it was a dream that altered me. Altered means changed. All right, past tense of the word alter. So the dream of the poet changes changes him, or changes the poet. All right. So when I came out of the oak wood back to human company, my walk was the walk of a human child, but my heart was a tree. So here, the dream that changed the poet It refers to the spiritual awakening of the poet. Now he realized the importance of nature, the importance of trees. All right, how important it is for the survival of human beings. So when he came out of the oak trees and when he came back to his own human society, all right, his heart was filled with compassion for the trees. So that is why he says, my walk was the walk of a human child. So physically he walked as a human child, but he had matured. But he says that his heart, all right, child in form, but a tree at heart, meaning now the indifference towards the trees was towards nature was removed from his mind and from his heart. He began to feel that he was like a tree and he needed trees, or let's say nature, for his own survival. So he felt compassion for the trees. So this is how the poem ends. Now the poem is filled with symbols, like all nobly stick and rag over here shows the poor and exploited state of Mother Nature. I'm so sorry. So all nobly stick and rag stands for the poor and exploited state of Mother Nature. How human beings, how mankind has exploited Mother Nature to for their own gains, for their selfish needs. Now, the black oak bark of the tree of the oak suggests aridity and barrenness, means the poor condition of the nature over here. And twice awake means the moral awakening. So now you don't have to be confused about the poet awakening for the second time. So first is when he wakes up, in his dream, when he wakes up, he finds the old woman. All right, and she opens up her little bag. So when the old woman opens up her little bag, this is then the poet awakens for the second time. All right. So when the old woman opens up her bag, she casts a spell upon the poet and he again falls asleep. And when he wakes up, he finds that he is surrounded by the oak trees. So that is where the poet awakens twice or for the second time. Now again, you have as usual, you have the comprehension exercises, and I'll be giving you the other exercises also in the WhatsApp group. So if you do after completing your exercises, you can send the completed works in my personal WhatsApp number, so I can check over there and again say what mistakes you have done and what things are to be needed to improve. All right. So with this, I end this class. Thank you.